Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. You are on the Heart of Success show, and I'm your host, Larissa Vakulina. I go live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. South Australian time zone. And here on this show, I'm sharing with you different tips, tools, motivation, inspiration, how, how you can create success and happiness in your life. And today I have a very, very special guest with me today. Most of you probably know this person, Inna Segal. She's an amazing, amazing healer. She's an internationally recognized healer, a professional speaker, author, and television host. So she's a pioneer of in the field of energy medicine, and she's got clients all over the world. She's changing lives. She's helping people to actually connect the dots from how we create our diseases and how we can actually recreate it consciously, how we can know ourselves better from the point of view of emotions and feelings. And I would like to really thank you, Ina, to uh, get onto this show. She's very busy lady, and I understand that it is a bit of challenging, but I'm really grateful to have you here, Ina, with us today. And I'm personally myself have your book as a Bible on my desk, just not I'm never disconnected from this book, and I have my personal story about how I healed my own breast cancer, actually based on this book. And don't be concerned about my technical issues here. I think we are a little bit foggy, but that's okay. It's gonna to start to be clear again. I don't know, technical issues, every time I, have something important, there's a technical issues. But anyway, we kind of in a blurry, foggy, cloudy way right now, but I think it's going to fix itself. And I really would like, Ina, to ask you about how did you become a healer? What really was a motivation or inspiration, or if was your natural gift, and how did you recognize that gift? Because we all have these abilities, but not many people recognizing it.
Hello, Larissa. Thank you for having me. For me, it really was coming from that place of pain and struggle and physical pain and just going round and round in circles and not knowing how to work with it, what to do with it. And essentially, I was going to see a lot of health practitioners, and I was trying really hard to I guess to heal from it through the medical profession, because I didn't really know anything about, even though it's in my family, so to speak, I didn't really know anything about the spiritual, emotional, mental aspect of it. And when I say in my family, I mean my great grandmother was incredibly clairvoyant, but I didn't even know that. Nobody really talked about it. So I always knew that I had this intuitive aspect, but again, it wasn't something that seemed strange. It was like, oh, I just know things sometimes, or, I have feelings. But essentially, my journey of going through the healing was trying to find somebody who could help me. It never occurred to me really, that I could heal myself or that I had any capacity for it. So essentially, I just was going to see different health practitioners. And then I met my partner at the time, and he had, and I would have been around 18, and I was struggling more and more with health conditions. And he knew a lot of different people in the industry. So, like kinesiologists and different healers and chiropractors, all this kind of more alternative practitioners, whereas I was very much medical before that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And essentially, I feel like we many of us have an opportunity for change through, I guess, through making a choice. And I got to a place where I was I had been seeing a chiropractor for about a year,
Mhm.
and I woke up one day because I was in agony constantly. I had really, really bad back pain.
Mhm.
And finally, this particular day, I just woke up, my whole body was twisted. I went to um, see him. Driving to his office was agony. So I literally felt like I was leaving my body, even though it was only a few minutes
Mhm.
drive. And he walked out and basically out of his office, and he basically said to me, your body's stuck. And I was like, yeah, I know this part. What are you going to do to help me? And he just said, there was silence, and then he said nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? And he just said, your body wants to be stuck, go home. So on the way there, I was very depressed and quite kind of numb. But on the way back, I was enraged about how dare he say this to me. But essentially, that was that life-changing moment where um, I made a decision that I was going to heal myself,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how to do that. But I really feel like that's the first step. I went, you know what, I'm just gonna do things step by step. And I went from getting to my house and just breathing with the pain, just trying
Mm.
to be, just the basics. And so I was breathing with the pain, and then it occurred to me that um, my mind kept coming in. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to count backwards from 30 because this is distracting. And then as I was doing that, it occurred to me that why don't I ask for divine help? Not that I fully believed it, to be honest, at
Mhm.
that stage, but I didn't know what I believed. So I was very young. So I was like, it won't hurt. And when I asked,
Yeah.
I just felt this, it was like warm golden light that entered my body. And I just thought, okay, something's happening. And
Mhm.
then I said, and I really don't know what that thought came from. I just said, if I could, I want to see my back. I want to see what's going on. And I saw my back like I had X-ray vision. So I got a shock.
Mhm.
And then I kind of went into discovery from a place of curiosity as opposed to a place of
Mhm.
victim.
Yep.
And so I just started asking, what is stored in my back? That was the biggest issue. I also had psoriasis all over my skin, and I had
Mhm.
really bad digestive issues and anxiety.
Mhm.
But the back was kind of the biggest issue. And
Mhm.
so as I was asking, I was getting a lot of visions and insights and feelings around just childhood and feeling unsupported, and family and ancestral traumas and energy. And so as I was getting those insights, I was just breathing through them and acknowledging them and recognizing where I'm going to need to discover more and learn more. And then I fell asleep. And the next day when I woke up, 70% of the pain was gone. My back wasn't twisted.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, something's happened. And then, because I was so skeptical, I didn't want to move. So I stayed in bed without doing too much for probably 2 or 3 weeks, like just getting up, going to the bathroom, and then doing whatever I needed to do, and doing the basics, but trying to get back to bed and just discover,
Mhm.
what my body's really trying to say. And from there, I realized that I awakened this ability to help others and tune into other people as well.
Right. What an amazing story. I mean, it resonates with me a lot because I went through similar, suffering and pains and things, but it's a little different. But I don't want to go into my story because I want more of your story. How did you decided to write the book? And also because you realized that there is some much more bigger power or some kind of a higher imperative that we most of our life don't even have the awareness of. And how, because your book is now helping so many people. It's like that realization that you went through that process of healing yourself, and then you decided, okay, well, if I did it for me, how I can actually help other people. And that manifested in this amazing book that a lot of people are actually having with them. I know a lot of clients of my clients refer to your book, and particularly for me, it helped a lot. So it's like I healed my own breast cancer, but I'm still manifesting my book in how I can help other people to do what I did. But the foundation for me was your book because it helped me to connect the dots in how I felt and what I went through. But for me, is really important to understand how did you actually decided I'm going to help others, I'm going to produce this, and you just did it. For me, it seems like I'm a little self-sabotaging from helping others because I still have this little voice sitting within and saying, you're not good enough. Who are you to imagine that you can do that, right? So,
I think we're all doing. But yeah, for me, for me, it was it really started from my family. I think it was kind of that feeling. I really had this sense that I wanted to help my grandparents, to be honest, because they'd been through so much trauma, so much pain in their life, that I just wanted to see if I could help them. And my grandfather used to have this horrific headaches. So I once essentially healed myself, I was like, I wonder if I can help him. And I would do this. I'd get him to lie down, and I'd tune in, and I'd kind of release stuff. And then within maybe 10 minutes after, he would go, "Oh my God, I feel so much better."
yeah.
And I think that helping him and then helping my grandmother was such an inspiration to me that I was like, I wonder if I could help more people. I wonder if I could help people that are, outside of my family. And I wonder if I actually have the ability to see, or is it just for myself or people, that I know? Because naturally, again, I'm a skeptical person. And and then I think it started with me helping at that time my partner's friends. And I remember sitting there and going, oh my God, I really didn't know this. Like the things that I was talking about, I really didn't know that they had this. And I feel like that was, and just seeing the shift and the change. And I remember, so funny, the first lady that I did a healing on that actually paid me, and I wanted to be a writer my whole life, so that wasn't kind of a new thing. I was planning to write novels though, and so I was writing, and doing professional writing at uni and at school. So it was definitely, I was going to write something.
Right.
And yeah, so I guess I felt like there was this real possibility of where that I could help people, and that there was this change and this shift that was happening for people just from the things that I was doing. And yeah, as I was saying, the lady who I first did this healing on, I'm actually doing a talk at her, that she's organized in a few days. But it's just funny because I remember she came and we did whatever we did, and I told her, I remember there was issues in her ankle and so on, and then 2 weeks later I spoke to her or something like that, and she said to me, "Oh, I forgot that I even had that." It was almost like, "Oh, I had this." So I think eventually I was doing a lot of healing work, both like live and also with people on the phone. We didn't, when I started, there was no Skype or Zoom or anything at the time. So I just really just talked to people on the phone. They'd email me their photo, and from there I would just pick up things, which was a really great kind of experience of trust and, refining my intuition. And I started seeing a lot of connections, a lot of links. And I think what was most fascinating to me was that, I could have been doing healing on somebody in China, somebody in Japan, somebody in Italy, somebody in the US, somebody in Russia, somebody in the UK, somebody in Australia. And essentially it was the same kind of overall patterns in different different parts of the body. So I started to go, oh wow, there is a real wisdom that is held, and it's of course the details are different, but there's this incredible wisdom that people need to understand. And I also found that I wanted to, it's almost like when I wrote the book, I wanted to give enough information to people without overwhelming them, and also open the door for them to discover their own wisdom, and at the same time to give them processes that essentially took their whole body system and soul and spirit into the healing journey, so that they weren't missing, aspects. And what I found was that at the time was that a lot of, there was a couple of books around, and I don't like writing or doing anything that I feel is easily available. And I just felt like there was, again, I obviously wasn't the first to write about it, but what I found was that the other authors essentially gave very basic information with no processes, with affirmations. And whilst affirmations can be very powerful in your life, it's not enough. Like you've got to work on all aspects of yourself. And so I also found that when people were coming to me, that I really had to take the time, especially, we're talking over 20 years ago, I had to take the time to really explain to them, hey, you've got to participate in your own healing. I healed myself through that participation, and I can help you, but you've got to do the work predominantly. And I found that a lot of the time people would come for like session 2 or 3, and I'd go, how did you go with the homework that I gave you? And, and they just kind of sit there and go, oh, I lost it, or I misplaced it, or, and part of this deep desire inside of me to help was like, well, how do I take away those excuses?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, look, if I write a book, then they can't make that excuse.
That's it. How clever. The creation. Yes. Yes. I found myself with my clients as well. There is some kind of, the homework when you go from the healing session. You really need to have this commitment and be present for your healing journey. But that's because I guess we in our society have been cut off from that presence, and we always rely on just magical pill or some really physical manipulation to get help. But of course we need to journey through the healing with all our presence. And I know you now have a new book already published, is it? The understanding modern spirituality. Unfortunately, I didn't get it yet. I'm gonna to, because I'm really interested. So I really appreciate your very detailed explanation, because I guess we healers, we all find it a little bit challenging, because the clients rely on us to heal them, but really healers are not healing. We are holding that presence and showing how they can activate their own self-healing capacities to deal with all these things, right? And when we discussed and organized our interview, we've been discussing topics that we're going to talk. And, you indicated that the soul and spirit is a topic of discussion. So I would like maybe we move into that very rich area, which a lot of people don't understand, and they don't really have a reference to that. So maybe you can just have a little basic explanation of what does it mean for you and how it is playing in your work and in your life.
Well, yeah, I think that to me, understanding our spiritual nature essentially shows us how everything about our lives, how we live our lives, how we think, how we feel, our practice that we do, how we show up, how we deal with challenges in our lives, and how we interpret the world. Essentially, whether we interpret the world as a scary, harmful place, or we see the bigger picture of the world, our relationships with other people. And I've always felt this being very drawn to spirituality, and at the same time wanting that depth, wanting that understanding of what is it, who are we really. And it's been a lifelong, I guess, journey of this exploration, because it's almost like the more you discover, the more there is. And so I, like many people, spend a lot of time kind of in that confusion of, what's the soul and the spirit? And do we really even need to understand the difference between the two? Is it the same thing? Is it, so I had an opportunity probably around 8 or 9 years ago where I stumbled maybe onto a a lady who had studied a lot of ancient teachings that were also teachings for the future. So they were kind of ancient, but also future based. And she introduced me to these very deep understandings, I guess, wisdom. And there was a lot of clarity between these differences, that the soul essentially was connected to, to our emotions, to our desires, to our personality, to to our very unique sense of self in a particular lifetime. And whereas the spirit was more of a eternal part of us, it was the part that connected everything and kind of traveled, through every lifetime and transformed things. And the spirit was the part of us that was always healthy and never got sick. Whereas soul, with all its confusions and emotions and chaos that can occur, got sick, and was very intertwined with the physical body, whereas the spirit was kind of higher than that, and the spirit was held within it the possibility for awakening the higher self within us, the really deep, wise self. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. A really beautiful explanation. I was studying with Barbara Brennan. She's also a pioneer in the energy healing, and she is former NASA physicist, but then she moved into this internal space of the human beings. It's a similar kind of explanation and a framework, maybe a little bit different, because we have this multi-dimensional nature of who we are, and we have this absolute eternal presence that seems so hard for people to grasp the understanding of it, and also difficult to connect, because unfortunately at this stage of human evolution in our societies, it is not paid attention to, and our real nature is actually not taught or explained, and we kind of cutting ourselves off from that wisdom and power, and the spiritual connection and the nature of the spirituality is really kind of almost unattainable, right? But when we go into crisis, different types of crises, illness crisis, the professional crisis, the relationship crisis, then we are more kind of open to start to look at the different possibilities, right? And you also mentioned that there's a multiple Earth lives. So how do you explain that for people who doubt in that or whatever? It's just, again, it's a fascinating subject of us possibly traveling from life to life to life, and have many incarnations, and carrying with ourselves the core, I say, the deficit, DNA of the deficit, because of that primal separation from the spirit. I guess, I don't know, that's kind of my understanding of how we took on the pain and the suffering of the human condition, so conditioning. So if you have a little bit more about that subject, that would be really cool.
I think that when I'm very logical in how I think about life. And when we start to look at family, for example, and we start to go, so here's, we have, I don't know, let's say 5 children in a family, and 3 of them have particular tendencies, and then two are, let's say, completely different and nothing like each other. And when you look at them, you go, well, they all grew up in the same household, same parents, um, yet one comes with this deep wisdom about one aspect, and another comes about, with something completely opposite.
Yep.
And some of it they've observed and some of it they never have. And you start going, well, how are they so different? And yes, like they have this ancestral aspect, but how are they so different? And there is no explanation for it except that an understanding of multiple earth lives, because that means that we are actually a unique person. And the challenge of it is really that um, the church and a lot of the religious institutions, they took aspects out at different times because they kind of felt like, oh, people are gonna, they don't understand, or they're not evolved enough to understand, or they're not whatever, for whatever reasons, or it's better to control them if they don't understand for whatever reasons. They took out a lot of information, and so, for example, a lot of people say from different religions that you have a soul, but the soul comes once. And there's some truth in that. When you actually understand things in a much deeper awareness. And there's also, people say, well, you have this one life. And there's also some truth in that, because as this soul in this body, I will only have one life. This is the absolute truth, right? But what happens, what people don't understand, and I've studied this for many years, is that the soul is very connected to your personality, essentially, and your karma and who you are, your destiny, in other words. And so each time, if let's say if we are looking at multiple earth lives, each time I might choose to be in a different physical body, right? So I don't always choose to be in a female body or a male body, so that I can experience life from different perspectives. And, I might be born in Africa one life, in another life in Australia, in another life in Ukraine, whatever. It's like every life gives me another perspective, and everything is about perspective in life in terms of how you live it. And so I feel like when you start to logically break it down, you start to go, well, actually, if the soul is so personal and unique to each one of us, then it does kind of make sense that in each life you will get a slightly different soul that actually connects to that body, to that family, to that timeline. Because now children are being born and they understand the phone and computer and what to do and what to press when they're one. When I was one, you didn't.
Well, it seems like the soul is almost like a um, a device that is collecting, generating all the experiences, and then when it's time to choose another body or have another physical expression, it has already all this storage of all of these experiences and knowledges and understandings, that the new life seems like with a new soul. But I don't know, I mean, we only can kind of perceive that this is true, or and each person has its own feeling, I guess, into this subject. But at the same time, I guess the generational tree and all these similarities with the grandchildren of looking like a grandmother or grandfather, there's also indicates that this kind of going on continuously, right?
Well, absolutely. And this is when we start to understand subtle bodies more, and you start to realize that the soul, for example, is intertwined and connected with our astral body. And so, for example, every time we go to sleep, the astral body actually goes on a journey
Mhm.
um, into the spiritual world because it needs it. That's why we need sleep, so
Mhm.
that it can bring back new forces, new soul forces. Whereas the etheric body, which is connected to family and ancestry, is also the body that plants have. That's how
Mhm.
they reproduce, and one plant looks like another plant.
Mhm.
And if you want to grow tomatoes, you have a tomato seed, you're going to grow them, right? So that's the etheric nature. And so there's a science to a lot of this, because there's a lot of people who have had highly awakened, way more than I have, even clairvoyant capacities and abilities, and had purified themselves and their bodies to such a degree that they were able to enter into the spiritual worlds and bring back incredible wisdom.
Mhm.
And again, the wisdom that I've studied, to me, there's so much logic to it, that it's like so detailed, that you
Mhm.
start to go, well, actually, wow, I can sit with this and allow my soul to really feel into what the truth of it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. Yes, of course. And I think we are all going through this grand transformation as a planet, as a human species, and of course, um, more and more people awakening, and more people start to really realize that they not only just that physical matter. They start to feel their different dimensions, and they start to get the connection to this really unknown states. And yeah, so that's just really resonating with me, all these talks. I can talk, hours and hours, but because it's so fascinating. And especially this the self-healing capacity that we all have. That's where my interest is, because I healed my breast cancer without any medical protocols, just basically connecting my state back when I actually was diagnosed, and realizing that I had absolute emotional mess. Although I was successful in business, I was really athletic, I was doing all the exercises and eating healthy as a vegetarian, but emotionally, I was completely lost. And I think that really is where I really kind of ignored that area of my life, where I was focusing only on the expression of, success, the physical appearance, on all of this kind of external reflection of my life. But I was, suppressing and even denying myself my own emotional state. And cancer became a really great trigger for me to wake up basically in one night. And the connection appeared in such a grand scale that what I'm doing with my life, I don't want to live my life the way I did before, and I really need to change. But you see, it's so hard to change for us, for people, when we actually create some sort of stability, some stable businesses or some stable jobs and things. But for me, it was such a deep, deep connection of that emotional state that was completely broken to my state and to my diagnosis, that I decided that I really need to first give myself a time and space to deal with my emotional state. And that's what I did. Instead of going and cutting myself or having chemotherapy, I just gave myself a space to be present with myself. And eventually Of course, the fear was there, but eventually I realized that cancer is my blessing. It's really kicked my ass and showed me that I'm not living the life that I actually deep inside wanted, but never decided and never did any actions to live that life, right? And once I just drop all of these restrictions and all of these rigid attachments to all these external symbols of the successful life, the healing happened itself, right? So, and of course, there've been a number of things that I did in combination with this, but the body responded so beautifully and so fast to that change in my mindset, in my heart set, in my soul set, right? So uh, I just don't know if I can explain it in the framework as you do, because I remember I was reading your book, and that really was giving me that light, like that light just light up in my mind and saying, oh my goodness, like what I am doing, exactly the description of what my life was, and that emotional state was just 100% true and real. And then from that point, I started to look and thinking, okay, well, I need to really change that. And I'm really deeply grateful for your contribution to this broken world, for these illusions and the narratives that are, in our societies, and that light of your own personal journey is like a, showing us the way as well. So thank you so much, Inna. And I really would like to move. Maybe you can, share with us about your new book, because I'm really intrigued and curious of what's next.
Yeah, and I think, I just want to say, I think it's extraordinary when we do take that time, when we go, you know what, there is wisdom inside of me, and I've disconnected from it by having a vision of something maybe from early on in my life, and now I've got to actually listen and get to me. That is what the soul brings to you, is that what am I meant to do in this life? And I
Mhm.
think, in coming back to, this book for me, it's like,
Mhm.
it was such a different book to write than The Secret Language of Your Body. And in fact, funny enough, I wrote The Secret Language of Your Body when I was 26 years old, and I wrote it in 1 year, so in 12 months, even though I had little kids and I was doing nonstop stuff.
Mhm.
And understanding modern spirituality probably took me 6 years, right?
Right.
And, and part of it was just a lot of research, a lot of thinking and sitting with concepts that that I guess, really expanded my life, and questioning. I'm one of those people who I like to question a lot of things. And so this is my book of what's beyond just physical healing and emotional healing. And
Mhm.
when you like, even here it says the bigger picture. So when you
Uh-huh.
kind of look at it, it's like, for me, it's been really that, like, when we're looking at the bigger picture of our lives, including, our education, and, what have we actually, what were we really taught?
Mhm.
And, I start the book with this kind of, what's a new way of thinking?
Mhm.
What's a new way of understanding life? And is it all just physical,
Yeah.
or, can we go beyond? And then it kind of, I take people into more of that spiritual exploration of, why do we need to learn about ourselves, not from just, I started very, very young, like from 18, when I met my first kind of long-term partner, where we went to a lot of kind of set sayings and set with gurus, and went on different retreats and all this stuff. And, and there was always this, like, who am I? This question, who am
Mhm.
I?
Yeah.
But I really felt that the answers that I was getting, on some level, they were kind of like, oh, wow, I am bigger than what I think, or I'm soul and spirit, or I'm nothingness, or whatever it is. And if I take this and that and the other away, what am I? So, I spent probably 10 years exploring that kind of more Eastern philosophy, I would say, of, let's dissolve the ego, let's kind of. And then I felt like there's more. I just feel like there's more. And I felt like I wanted to deeply discover it. And I wanted to discover, I was mature enough, I was ready to discover this depth. And I wanted to essentially understand, what is my home? What is the spiritual world? And how is that related to my physical life? And how do I understand? Why do I need to understand myself, like my subtle bodies, in order to live fully and healthily? And why do I need to understand my ancestry? And why do I need to, like, rather than denying it?
Mm. Mm.
Because I find, like, a lot of people, including people in my own family,
Mm.
they don't like some part of their ancestry. They just pretend it never existed,
Yeah.
and they deny it, and they go,
Right.
I'm not that, or I don't connect
Yeah.
with it. And, and I was like, well, what happens when you don't? So, for example, everyone that I watched in my family deny their heritage have blood issues,
Mm-hmm.
some way or form, and that could be low iron, and they think it's just from the food they eat. But I'm like, no, it's from the denial of ancestry.
Absolutely. It's all in that energetic connection, because we're all connected, and even small part can influence universe, and the universe, of course, influencing us. It's like when we perceive that this is all connected matrix of everyone, well, then, of course, denial of a few people in our family can really affect us as well, right? So,
Well, absolutely, because you kind of go, well, I've got to understand myself. I've got to embrace all of it. So, like, I was born in Minsk in Belarus, and
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time kind of figuring out, why was I born there? I mean, I was 10 when I came to Australia, but the, the fact of being born in that country, and what that was about, and what was the earth there about, and how does that influence my astral body, my etheric body, my who I am, how I think, how I the depth of me as a human being, my ability to. So, for example, people born on that soil, something that I've learned is they have an incredible ability to connect to the shadow and to understand it and transform it and help others. And it's like, oh, I totally get that.
Thank you, because I was born in Siberia, in Russia. So,
Right?
yeah, but again, through the journey of that indoctrinated child, and looking at the happiness and success from the external point of view, I went through an enormous suffering, enormous pain. But finally, I kind of, dropped all of these masks, and really started to ask these questions: who am I? Right? And that's so nice to have you on this show, because it's almost like we kind of from that land up
Yeah.
there that is, ancestrally quite close, I guess, in culture, and you know.
Yeah. And I think when you understand things, and that's what I'm really asking people to do, is to go, stop living your whole life on the surface, because essentially you're in constant worry and stress on the surface of things that are very temporary. And I believe that we need to deepen ourselves so that we can learn what's lasting. What are the things that are eternal? What are the things that make us come back also into a new life with more strength, more courage, more capacity? Like, if I look at my grandparents and what they went through, and this was my question at one point, at the beginning, I saw just the suffering and the victimhood, because my grandmother went through the war, and essentially she was one of 8 children. Um, her mother was clairvoyant, and at 30 said to her, look, you're going to be the only one who stays alive. And, my grandmother might have been, I don't know, 12 or 13 at that time when she was told. And everybody else is going to, and your dad and everybody else is going to die. And it's like, just imagine who you've got to be to hear that. And then on the day where, the Nazis came essentially to get my grandmother's family, her mother's courage and her mother's insights protected her and saved her life. And she, but to save my grandmother's life, in that moment, her mother was shot in front of her.
Oh my goodness. This is where the trauma, like there's a stopping of energy, life force energy happening. And that stopping is still in the generational tree.
Exactly. Exactly. And so my grandmother survived this horror and this, war, and for, on her own for 4 years, in, minus 40, minus 50 degrees. And she essentially froze the trauma inside of her. And so to me, that uncovering of the trauma and, and the richness of it, and also realizing, hold on a sec, what is my grandmother's gift to me? And my grandmother's gift to me is courage.
That's it. Yeah,
courage.
absolutely.
It's like, I was born into that family because in this lifetime I've needed to learn courage. I've needed to be courageous and to go, it's okay. It's like, I have to do the work that I do, as you can relate. I have to know myself, because if I don't, I'm just going to be shot down every minute, because everything I do, every time I'm in public, I'm judged by, whoever's there. And it's like, I have to know who I am from all these different angles so that I can be courageous.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I feel like that is such a big key to everything that's this world's about at the moment, that have to develop. So part of, I think I was saying, in terms of spirituality, when I was looking at the Eastern philosophy, it was all about the ego's bad, 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 and it just never really made full sense to me. And it was like, hold on, but what's an ego? That's part of me. That's part of my personality. And what I've learned since then is that there's different aspects of the ego. So there is the highest part of the self is in the ego, and the lowest part is and everything. And the ego is my absolute unique self, and my ability to know myself, my ability to understand. And so I really feel like, again, this book is about that. There's a lot of questions there, a lot of questions that people have never thought of, never asked themselves, that are there to expand you, to deepen you, to make you grow, to make you, I guess, really appreciate life. And when I go back to my grandmother and my grandfather, who actually spent 10 years in Siberia in a work camp for something he didn't do from 14 to 24 and also suffered greatly. It was like, if I, like, what is it, what strength, what courage can I take from my grandparents? And one of the biggest things, if beyond courage, is love of life. Like, my grandparents appreciated and loved life like I never saw anybody else do. Like, depression was not really something that it's like my grandfather went into, again, the diseases they had were very obvious based on what they'd experienced. So, but essentially, it was like when my grandmother was dying, I remember asking her, do you feel lucky or unlucky? And she said, oh, I feel like I'm the luckiest. And she was in a lot of pain at the time. And she said, every day, every breath, even through this pain is like, wow, I've had another day to live. I've had another day to be here and to share with my family. And it was like, I know people who've, like, not even 1/100 of the trauma that my grandparents went through, who are, depressed and suicidal and all of that. And it's like everybody's journey is their own. So I'm not judging. But when you have had to face death so early in life, your how you experience life, how you value it, how you live it, how you give is so different. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so for me,
the perspective is changing completely. I can relate it to me because I nearly died. I mean, if I wouldn't have this awakening and realization, I most probably would, of course, go through the medical protocol. And who knows what's the result of that would be, right? There's not really a high success rate from all of these protocols. So the perspective is changing. And coming back to this ego, we really need to have ego, like that Eastern philosophies of that we need to get rid of ego. I mean, we have to have a healthy ego because that's where the driving force is. That's where we are curious and inspired because of that healthy ego in us. But of course, we need to really be aware that this really distracted, distorted ego part of us and a super ego that is holding it all together. Again, I'm referring to a different framework of, anatomy, all the energy anatomy and things. But we just have to, I guess, accept who we are fully with all of our parts. And then we more equipped to start to have that deeper exploration. And your explanation and your understanding of it is really, really helping many people to get the gist of it. And thank you so much for your presence here on this show. And I have another question, last one, I guess, because it was in our list of the points to discuss. There's ancestral healing for Larissa. Is this something that you mean for me to explain how I healed myself? Or is this your offer for me to be healed by you? Something, I don't know.
I think ancestral healing is just, is an understanding of what we're talking about, which is, going back to your roots and actually going, how do I embrace every part of me, and how do I do it in a way that is nourishing and strengthening? And I feel like, so often, as we know, for example, when people talk about Russia as an example, and they're, and they're doing it through that perspective of, oh, Russians are bad, because the war is bad, so there must be bad people, without an actual comprehension that people have nothing to do with the politics. They don't have a say in the politics, really. They might have every nation, how they think, how they feel, creates karmic experiences in each country. So, we can say, okay, we were born in that country, that we carry some of that karma or some of that heaviness. But I think it's so important for people to think for themselves and not be brainwashed, and also to understand that it doesn't matter, what politicians say about a country or, the people. It's like every country is there for a reason, and it has richness, and every people that are there have richness and have something very profound to offer. And I feel like, right now we're in a time where if it's almost like if one country doesn't agree with another, so this is the low part of the ego, now attacks, and now all the beauty, all the depth, all the incredible richness and teachings of that country is now shut down, as opposed to embraced. I used to travel nonstop, and I used to go to different countries, and the countries that were the least, that had the least money, were the ones I felt we needed to learn the most from. And I was like, you put these countries down, but these people get it. They embrace their ancestry. They see the beauty of it. From everything, from how you eat in that culture and understanding it. How people, the depth of people's thinking, the cultural care and compassion and support. And so, I feel like even when we talk about ancestry, it's almost like, understand, like so many people are caught up in this, my parents were this or that or the other, or my grandparents. And it's like, that's why I share about my grandparents for me, because, essentially, for years, many, many years, I thought, what's the point? Like, they're victims of, horrors and just horrible things in life, and death, and just trauma. But when I've seen the purity of their soul, like their soul has been so purified by it, it was like, oh my God, these people have gone through the worst of the worst, but they're so loving and so kind and so appreciative of life. I want to learn this, I want to hold on to this. And so to me, this, this ancestry exploration is so much about, there's things that you can let go of that is, like worry and fear and stress from ancestors. But at the same time, what can you take, what can you take and embrace and bring with you from your family, whoever anybody is, that essentially makes you shine more and makes you be more capable of doing things? Because, like your question at the beginning, what even, made me go, I can do this, I can write a book, I can travel around the world? My grandparents. Because, every time I had this thought, I can't do it, who am I? And then the question was, well, why is it that you think that someone else should do it instead of you? Like, who are you to think that, are you that lazy that you think that somebody else has to do it, even though you have these ideas, like, why would you give it to somebody else if you can do it? And it was the same with, lots of people used to say, I traveled a lot, especially in my 20s and early 30s by myself around the world. And people were like, oh my God, you're so courageous. And in my mind, it was always like, oh, I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid to, go somewhere I don't know. Oh, well, how does this compare to what my grandparents went through? It doesn't. So how do I get the courage? And in that moment, I would feel courageous. I would feel like, what am I worried about? Okay, so
Yeah.
I got a country, I don't know the language, so like that's an opportunity, right? So
Yes.
it's always that. I feel like it's so important to find the beauty of your ancestry and the
Yeah.
strengthening aspect of it, and also to have compassion for your ancestors and
Mm.
understanding and awe in some ways for what they've gone through. Because so many times I've also thought, you know, I've had a lot of challenges in my life like anybody else, but I don't want the challenges my grandparents went through. So I would go, thank you that these people are way more courageous than me, because am so grateful that my soul came after, because here's
Hmm.
this people that showed me, but I don't want that experience.
Yeah. Well, Ina, I think we kind of over 1 hour now, and I would like to ask you to give our listeners maybe about like three short, very basic points of how they can start to maybe connect to themselves, or just 3 points that you can just say, look, that's where we at right now, and just listen and do this, or wherever your 3 points is, so that it can benefit people.
Well, I feel like my point number one is, whatever's going on in your life, no matter how challenging or how you're pointing fingers at anybody, take responsibility. Actually kind of go, hey, I'm responsible for where I'm at right now, and thus from that place of responsibility, I want to find out what to do and who to work with and who to learn from that resonates with me,
Yeah.
that can guide me. Somebody who's done something different to you, somebody that can guide you to something that is not perfect but empowering,
Hmm. Hmm.
something that helps you to live in a different way, and so that would be point number one. Number two, it's like, how do we befriend ourselves? We've got to find the time. There is no other way. Like, with no time, there's no such thing. And in that time, actually touch your body,
Hmm.
breathe into it, ask questions, not just to the body, but to yourself, to your soul who's intertwined inside the body, and listen to your feelings. When there's pain, when there's trauma, when there's sickness, your inner being is saying you're going the wrong direction. You're going in direction of self-destruction instead of self-healing, as you were saying you found out. And it's like, the biggest work that I've been doing with people, it's taken me a very long time to figure out how to bring all the elements together in a way that is holistic, like truly holistic. And I feel like so much of developing that inner life within yourself, in other words, understanding yourself, is seeing, when did I get stuck? When did I get stunted? When did I stop growing? Finding these aspects, and they are archetypal, and then embracing them and giving them a new life, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Yes.
right? So that they can become alive and help you to go in the direction where you need to go. And so this is really listening. And I guess, number three essentially for me is, what is your spiritual journey? What does this mean to you? How do you how does that show up for you every day? So, is it through like reading books like this, and learning about it? Is it through meditation and asking for help and support, from something higher? Is it through your relationships and seeing some, the soul and the spirit in another, and they're both
Mhm.
struggles and the beauty of them. So I really feel like we have to understand ourselves as a spiritual being, because the more we do, the less we can be manipulated, bought, confused. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
and the more we can truly live in integrity.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Inna. So we covered a lot of things, and I send you a link. You can share with your audience and things wherever. But I also would like to ask you if you ever considered to come to South Australia, possibly physically. We can get some people together. You can teach some stuff. And I have a property of 89 acres, and I'm running wellness center here. I have a hall that can hold, I don't know, 80 people, and we can do some work. I mean, it's just a suggestion, but again, just possibility, another possibility to
I have been to South Australia maybe, well, quite a few years ago now, but it's definitely an option to talk about it for the future.
yeah,
Definitely look
really,
into it.
really good. Thank you so much again, and yeah, that was really, really. I'm grateful you just can find time and be with us almost more than an hour now. So I'm gonna to put some music at the end, and again, thank you for people who've been here, but most of them gonna then reply and listen and watch. And if you stay for a couple of minutes behind the scenes, that would be good. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll come back on Wednesday, next Wednesday, with another guest. She is a dream reader, so possibly would be another interesting interview. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.